Cinderella, a magical bedtime story. Once upon a time, in a kingdom far, far away, there lived a kind and gentle girl named Cinderella. She had eyes as bright as the morning sun, and a heart as warm as a cozy fire on a cold winter's night. Cinderella lived with her father, a noble and loving man, in a beautiful house at the edge of the kingdom. Her mother had passed away when she was very young, but her father always reminded her that kindness and courage would guide her through life. And so, Cinderella grew up with a heart full of love and a spirit full of hope. One day, her father remarried, bringing a new woman into their home, Lady Tremaine. She was a proud and elegant woman, always dressed in fine gowns with jewels sparkling at her throat. Along with her came her two daughters, Anastasia and Dreamy. At first, Cinderella hoped they would become her new family, that they would share laughter and happiness together. But Lady Tremaine and her daughters were not kind. They were selfish and unkind, always looking for ways to make themselves feel superior. They barely spoke to Cinderella at first, treating her like a servant instead of a sister. Then, a terrible thing happened. Cinderella's father fell ill, and within days, he passed away. With her father gone, Lady Tremaine took full control of the household. The warm, loving home Cinderella had known became cold and cruel. Lady Tremaine made Cinderella move to a small room in the attic, away from the grand halls of the house. She took all of Cinderella's fine dresses, and gave her nothing but old rags to wear. Worse, she made Cinderella do all the chores, sweeping, scrubbing, washing, and cooking, while Anastasia and Dreamy lounged about, laughing and gossiping. But despite the hardships, Cinderella never let sadness take away her kindness. She made friends with the little mice that scurried around the attic, and the birds that perched on her window. They became her family, keeping her company and cheering her up with their playful antics. One bright morning, an exciting announcement spread across the kingdom. The king had declared a grand ball at the royal palace. Prince Charming, the king's son, was seeking a bride, and all young women of the kingdom were invited. The entire household buzzed with excitement. Anastasia and Dreamy were overjoyed. They rushed to find the finest gowns, chattering about how they would win the prince's heart. Cinderella, too, dreamed of going to the ball. For just one night, she wished to step away from her chores and feel like a princess. With great care, Cinderella found an old dress that had belonged to her mother. It was simple but elegant. With the help of her animal friends, she sewed and stitched, adding ribbons and beads to make it look beautiful. As she worked, her heart filled with hope. The night of the ball arrived. Anastasia and Dreamy, dressed in grand, shimmering gowns, climbed into their carriage, giggling excitedly. Cinderella came downstairs in her newly decorated dress, her heart beating fast. But before she could even step outside, her stepsisters let out shrieks of jealousy. "How dare you think you can go to the ball?" Dreamy cried. "Your dress, it's nothing but patched-up rags." Anastasia sneered. And with that, they grabbed at her dress, tearing the delicate fabric until it hung in ruins. Lady Tremaine stood by, silent but satisfied, as the carriage rolled away, leaving Cinderella alone in the dimly lit hall. Cinderella ran to the garden, tears streaming down her face. Her dream had been shattered. She sat beneath an old willow tree, whispering softly to the night sky, "I only wanted one night to feel special." Just then, a warm, golden light shimmered in the air. A gentle voice spoke, "Why are you crying, my dear?" Cinderella gasped. Standing before her was a kind old woman with twinkling eyes and a knowing smile. She held a wand that sparkled like 1,000 stars. "I am your fairy godmother," she said warmly. "And I have come to help you." Cinderella wiped her tears, hardly believing her eyes. "But how?" she asked in wonder. The fairy godmother lifted her wand and swirled it in the air. "Bibbidi-bobbidi-boo," she sang. In a flash of shimmering magic, a nearby pumpkin transformed into a magnificent carriage. Mice turned into proud white horses, and her ragged dress became a breathtaking gown of silver and blue, flowing like moonlight. On her feet appeared delicate glass slippers that sparkled with every step. Cinderella's eyes filled with joy. She twirled in delight. "Oh, fairy godmother, it's beautiful." The fairy godmother smiled. "But remember, my dear, when the clock strikes midnight, the spell will break, and everything will return to the way it was." "I understand," Cinderella said, her heart soaring. She climbed into the carriage, and with a final wave of the wand, she was off to the ball. At the palace, the ballroom sparkled with golden chandeliers and music filled the air. Noblemen and ladies danced gracefully, but when Cinderella stepped in, all eyes turned to her. Prince Charming, who had been politely greeting guests, suddenly stopped. He had never seen such grace and beauty before. He walked toward Cinderella and, without a word, held out his hand. She hesitated, then placed her hand in his, and together they danced across the floor, moving as if they had known each other forever. Anastasia and Dreazella watched in fury, not realizing that the mysterious princess was their own stepsister. Cinderella had never felt happier. But as the night went on, she heard the first chime of the clock. Midnight. She gasped and pulled away from the prince. "I must go," she said, hurrying toward the doors. "Wait." The prince called, but she was already running down the grand staircase. In her haste, one of her glass slippers slipped from her foot. She could not stop. As she reached the carriage, the clock struck 12, and poof, her gown turned back into rags, the carriage into a pumpkin, and the horses into mice. Breathless, Cinderella ran home, clutching the remaining glass slipper. The next morning, a royal announcement was made. The prince had found the slipper and declared that he would marry the girl whose foot it fit perfectly. Lady Tremaine heard this and knew she had to stop Cinderella. She locked her in the attic. But Cinderella's animal friends were quick and clever. They stole the key and freed her just as the royal messenger arrived. Anastasia and Dreazella both tried to squeeze their feet into the delicate slipper, but it was no use. Then, just as the messenger was about to leave, Cinderella stepped forward. Lady Tremaine sneered, but it was too late. The slipper fit perfectly. Soon, Cinderella was dressed in a royal gown, standing beside Prince Charming. The wedding bells rang, and Cinderella and her prince lived happily ever after. As Cinderella looked out over her new kingdom, she knew that kindness, courage, and a little bit of magic had changed her life forever. And so, dear children, always remember, dreams do come true. Good night, dear ones. May your dreams be as magical as Cinderella's.